Hey guys, what's up? I'm JKMAZ, founder and head coach of the Porn Reboot system and elevatedrecovery.org. Now, before we get started on this video, if you haven't already, please do subscribe, share this video with other men who you feel might benefit from it. I release about 4 videos a week, every week, and if you're serious about ending your behavior with pornography and masturbation, this is the channel to watch to get actionable tips towards ending your behavior. So today we're going to talk about relapse prevention tips and concepts. The reason why I mention concepts is because relapse prevention is so much easier when you actually understand the nature of your relapse. So the first one I'm going to start with is the concept that when you start experiencing relapse symptoms, at that very moment, you lose control of your emotions, you lose control of your thoughts, and you lose control of your judgment. And this is literally what happens to you biochemically. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because there are many men who watch these videos who are either trying to do the stop fapping thing, or perhaps you're trying to engage in semen retention, or just control your sexual behavior in general. And you've made a very clear decision to end or control your behavior. You're very rational when you make it, you set up very clear boundaries, and you understand that there's a lot of pain that you experience when you cross these boundaries. However, it's always surprising to you after your relapse how much you just didn't give a shit once you got into that zone of relapsing. And this is because if you do not have the right coping skills and strategies to manage your relapse, then you are going to lose control of your emotions, your thoughts, and your judgment. All of that goes out of the window once your relapse begins. Here's the second tip. Understand that all those relapse symptoms that I spoke about, those warning signs, if you want to see them as that, all of them are unconscious to you, which means that when you're about to relapse, you literally block them from your conscious awareness. And this happens all the time. You don't need me to tell you this. Think about it. Why is it that no matter how many times you tell yourself, don't watch porn, don't go beyond your porn blocker, don't go into the bathroom and do that, don't watch porn at this specific time. After you relapse, you tell yourself, you know what, I relapsed, it's evening, it's right before bed, you know what, I'm not going to do that tomorrow. Yet the next day, you do it promptly, as if nothing has changed. And that's because it is unconscious. So one of the best things that you can do is stop working against your brain. I am always, and I've always been against using willpower. And willpower means trying to fight this. If willpower works, why is it that you're still watching these videos? The reason why is that willpower does work, but it does not work in the case of compulsive sexual behaviors. You cannot work against your brain, you have to work with your brain. So how do you work with your brain? Well, the first thing is you acknowledge and accept the fact that, hey, when I relapse, it's usually unconscious. It doesn't matter if I slip the day before. Within 24 hours, I will become unconscious of it. Don't fight that. We don't need to go into the science of it, although I've done so in previous videos. But just accept that. Just work with your brain. So this is what my brain does. Well, how do we prevent it now? Well, what you need to do is you need to put together a checklist while you're conscious, like after watching this video or pausing this video and doing so, and thinking of all the things that lead to a relapse. So maybe you realize that if you're not getting enough sleep, you're most likely to slip or relapse. If you're spending way too much time entertaining yourself, you're more likely to slip and relapse. If you're spending a lot of time on social media, checking out fit chicks or Instagram models or whatever, and Instagram, spending too much time on Twitter, reading the news a lot, generating a lot of anxiety, if you realize that these are all the things which lead to relapse, then you need to have a checklist with the behavior that will prevent you from feeling that way. So you might have a checklist which says something like, am I spending more than 2 hours a week on Instagram? Yes or no? Am I controlling my anxiety levels by meditating and by getting enough rest? Am I eating well? Am I eating healthy? Am I being social with my friends and preventing myself from going into isolation? So these are a few things you can do. Now in the Porn Reboot system, we actually have a list called the Relapse Prevention Checklist. And this is put together from data from thousands of our clients who have relapsed in so many different ways. So we basically went through that and we pulled out the most common ways that men are likely to relapse. And then you go through this checklist. But you can create your checklist on your own if you're not in our program. That's one of the easiest ways to work with your brain towards relapse prevention. The third tip is I want you to understand that your relapse is not something that just happens. You know, a lot of guys, you'll see them comment and post and say things like, well, my relapse just happened. You know, one moment I was chilling and the next thing I know, this overwhelming urge took over and it just happened. And that's a very simplistic way of looking at this. If you've been struggling with an out of control sexual behavior or struggling to stop watching pornography and masturbating for over a year, listen, brother, it's time for you to get serious about this and get deeper into it. Understand what's happening. Now, your relapse is your creation. And this means that your relapse comes together as a result of your values, as a result of your attitudes, and as a result of your behavioral responses. And what that means is that the things that you believe about sex, the things that you believe about women, the things that you believe about your emotions, all have an impact on your relapse. So a man could become a part of our program, and I teach him and give him all these tools and tips. You know, if you look in the comment section, even when you're done watching this video, you'll see that there'll be somebody who comes here and asks a very specific question. Always, they're going to be a group of guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're seeking help, and I respect that. But you're usually asking for tips. They might be usually asking for some sort of trick for something specific. Now, none of that is going to work unless you examine your beliefs, your values, your attitudes, and the responses that you have behaviorally. Here's an example. If you believe deeply, you have a belief that if I don't masturbate or if I don't have some sort of sexual release, that is going to be unhealthy for me in some way, and that's where it ends. You haven't gone further than that. Then anytime you stay off pornography for a certain amount of time and experience a very strong urge, that belief is going to come up. It's going to come up from wherever it's hiding and manifest itself. And then the message you will receive is that, well, it's unhealthy to have very strong sexual urges. I must release. That is going to cause you to relapse. When it comes to, let's say, some of the values that you have, you may believe that, hey, I'm a guy who deserves to have sex. So let's say you're a guy who is acting out and stepping out in his relationship, and let's say maybe your wife is pregnant or she's not able to have sex with you. You're just like, you know what, I'm a guy who needs to have sex once a week. That's one of your values, and if you're not getting it from your wife, well, you're going to break the bounds or the agreements of your relationship and you're going to go out and get it somewhere else. That's an example of your values. And so, again, to completely prevent your relapse, especially for the long term, it's very important to examine your values and your beliefs. Again, this is something we do within the Porn Reboot system, but you can do it on your own as well. And the final tip I have for you today is a bit of a contradiction to everything else I've shared with you. And that is that the relapse process can be interrupted or controlled at any point. That means that it is not completely out of your control. So yes, it is unconscious. Yes, you do lose control of your thoughts, your emotions, and your rational judgment. Yes, it is your own creation from your values and your beliefs. But at the same time, if you learn the skills and the strategies that you need in order to deal with it, you are going to be able to stop it right in the middle. To give you an analogy, it's like you can learn how to fight, you can learn how to defend yourself, you can learn how to be violent, but you don't really need to use it in a time of violence, right? It's better to prevent a war, like if you have an altercation with somebody, it's better to prevent a fight from happening and go away and be alive than it is to actually instigate a battle with that person and start fighting. However, if you have no choice, and let's say you live in a war zone or you live in a place where there's a very high chance of violence when you step out of the door of your home, it is better to be armed and it is better to have some sort of system to defend yourself. And that's the analogy I'm using for your relapse. It is better in general to prevent a relapse from occurring. But sometimes we find ourselves at different points in our life, very low points in our life. We might feel depressed, we might have lost somebody, we might be going through a tough time financially or mentally. And these things make us very prone for a relapse. There's so many emotional things happening. In those cases, it is better to have a system that can help you to stop your relapse in its tracks. So whenever you're ready for that, if you feel that you need that system, if you feel that you'd rather be, what's the word for it? There's a saying that goes, better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener at war. So if you're one of those guys that would rather be equipped and ready to handle these very strong urges and interrupt his relapse, then we might be able to help you. Now in the description below this video, there's a link to schedule a call with one of my Reboot strategists just to find out if you are a good fit for any of our coaching programs. And honestly, even if you're not a good fit, there's no charge for the call. It'll also be a good opportunity for you to kind of bounce off some of the ideas that you have. That means maybe you're trying some things and they've not been working for you. Well, our Reboot strategist might be able to point you in the right direction as well. Just one thing I will add is that you do have to be over 25 to put in an application. But if you'd still like to learn those skills, another way you can do so for free is to join our free Facebook group. There's also a link to it in the description below this video. And this is a place where you can get yourself an accountability partner. It's a place where you can learn more about our system. It's a place where you can be around very serious men who are supportive of each other and ready to end their behavior. I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. I hope you enjoyed and you found these 4 relapse tips helpful. I'll speak to you later on in the week. Take care.